The timeline exercise that we had you do was based on the 5 developmental phases of leadership that Robert Clinton outlines in his book, The Making of a Leader. Clinton defines 5 phases that God takes leaders through. And he bases this on research of biblical leaders as well as modern leaders. So it's a combined kind of thing. A developmental phase is a unit of time in a person's life that God uses to bring a person to a greater level of character and usefulness. Now, in real life, these phases are not as cut and dried as they're presented here, and many things can happen concurrently. Like I feel like I'm in a couple phases right now, so just keep that in mind. I like the timeline exercise because it helps us to get close to our story, and it fits in amazingly with Clinton's work. It's important to be able to look back on your life, taking the lens back on the whole of you, and identify the phases you've gone through and see God's purposes in them. You may want to reorganize your timeline to capture these phases. And the phases are sovereign foundations, inner life growth, ministry or fruitful work, life maturing. In our later description, we'll combine those 2 phases. Then there's convergence, great phase, and the wilderness phase. So phase 1, sovereign foundations, represents the context that you are born into, your heritage, your personality, if you're an introvert or extrovert with all the shades in between. It represents your financial background, whether you're born into poverty or with great resources, your family background, what your family history and makeup is, even your birth order. Like sovereign foundations, my friend Dave's daughter said through her growing up years that she wanted to be the President of the United States. But as a Canadian, born in Canada, this was not going to be possible due to her birth certificate and her Canadian citizenship. So you don't have any control really over these things. Some of us have had a drama-free childhood, while others grew up in a home and a past with a lot of trauma. But God in His providence works these into the life of the leader-to-be. While we have no control with what we've been dealt, we can choose how to respond to those things. So key points in this phase. God has been sovereign in your life, and He uses everything, both good and bad, to uniquely shape you to accomplish His purpose. There's nothing wasted in this journey. In order to grow as a leader, we must, little by little, embrace these foundational aspects of our lives, because how we view these events will color everything about us. So we need to learn to see the hand of God in our past, and like Joseph from the Old Testament, be able to say, "You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good, to accomplish what is now being done." Some steps forward for you as you look at your sovereign foundations. Well, a leader needs to own their story. You don't have to like it all, but do come to the place where you see that God was at work and is redeeming all of it. Give your best energy to leading yourself, and thank God for your foundation, even the hard stuff, because it's what made you who you are today. Likely, at some point in your life, you will need to do the inner work, I did, of making peace with the past. Phase 2, inner life growth, or sometimes we call it the discipleship phase. This is the phase where we are given opportunities to lead. We begin to learn to lead by doing. It's in this phase the foundation for a lifetime of leadership begins to be laid. And at this point, it's not so much about what you are producing as a leader, but rather your personal development as a leader. There's an emphasis on basic skills training, but the most important training is in the realm of the heart of the leader. So what are some things that leaders learn in this phase? Well, they learn hard skills. Some examples could be time management. I remember the moment where on my first day I was given a day timer by my first lead pastor, and him saying to me, "And you will use this." Then there are healthy habits like fitness and regular connections with God. There are how to determine priorities that you would lead from, and then your personal values, how to have difficult conversations, and how to live with conflict. Ouch, that's a hard one. There's learning to live in the gap of the real and the ideal. There's learning to lead yourself, getting what you need to be at your best. And as we pointed out earlier, this is a time of character or heart development. So that includes learning to know God more intimately through the spiritual disciplines. This is growing in dependence on Jesus. This is submission to authority and an attitude of submission. We won't be able to lead until we first learn to follow. Being a part of a team and serving others on the team and learning not to care who gets the credit. Then there's faithfulness, even in the small tasks, and how our maturity is not a matter of age, but of our character. In this phase, God patiently develops our discernment and obedience through tests. Each successive test builds on the previous one. And like we said earlier, if a leader fails or skirts a test, God graciously provides another opportunity for them to try again. The quality of these first few years will in many ways shape the destiny of the leader, because it is here that our foundation is laid. So for me, as I mentioned earlier, my work life began with McDonald's, and the training was excellent. It changed me fundamentally to the point where we encouraged all three of our kids to start their work careers there. Mentors are crucial in this phase as they impart to a less experienced leader. And my mentor was a guy named Rob, still in relationship with him to this day. He was part of our church, and he was my McDonald's manager. He challenged me, he pushed me, he encouraged me, even taking me to the barber for my first haircut apart from my mom's. That was a life transformation right there. I think what I learned during this phase is how being faithful in the little things, the small tasks, means that God can move us on to greater responsibilities. Lots of people don't make it through this phase. They just want to skip it and begin to preach to thousands or do amazingly big things, but not set up the chairs for a Bible study. Then there's phase 3 and 4, that ministry life stage or fruitful work stage and maturing stage. What happens in these phases? Well, the leader moves into his or her productive years in leadership. There's character and fruitfulness. Time is spent discovering your gift mix, and this is discovered through experimentation, trying things. And in this stage, it's important to say yes to maybe more or different opportunities and areas of potential giftedness, because you can't really know where your gifts lie unless you say yes to a sufficient amount of challenges. Sometimes our no can keep us from developing. Those who are frustrated in their later years in leadership are often frustrated because they have never discovered what they are really good at. They've played it safe for too many years. Once you know what you're good at, you then need to take responsibility to develop the skill through things like reading, personal study, training programs, mentoring, formal schooling. And when you spend time doing things you are good at, it's fun. It's probably fruitful too. One of the things that I've loved about getting older is knowing myself and what I'm good at and what I'm not good at, and then build a team to complement my strengths and cover my weaknesses. Phase 5, amazing phase. This is convergence, where timing, need, opportunity, calling, and gifting all come together. So convergence occurs when the leader's potential is maximized. God moves the leader into a role that matches their giftedness, experience, temperament, their character, their spiritual maturity, their destiny, and geographical location. It occurs when a leader is running on all cylinders, when it's all humming, and they are making their greatest contribution. So it's the sweet spot. Maybe you use the word wheelhouse. It's where it is good. In convergence, There is a clear fit between the needs and the circumstance and the gifts of the leader. By this phase, leaders don't feel a need to please everyone at all times. They have nothing to prove. There is a flow in their leadership. There's a relaxing back in God. And at this stage, a leader can become a mentor who really invests in others' lives, though you can start that earlier. A special note, convergence. Think back to when you were 20. You wanted to start in convergence, but that's not how it works. It takes a lifetime of God putting it all together for us. Okay, before we move on, there is one more phase. It is a special phase called the wilderness experience. Between each of these stages, there's often a boundary or a time of isolation. And this phase can occur a lot of times in the middle of our lives where we bump into big questions. Things like, who am I and what is my calling? Is this all there is? Or how do I get my life back? I'm so busy at work and at home. Or what do the next 30 years hold? The wilderness experience is an intense season of reflection on life, work, and ministry. It's often accompanied by burnout, and mystics called it the dark night of the soul. The dark night of the soul. It could be death of a vision or disappointment. Maybe it's a bit of midlife crisis or the loss of a job or a season of hiddenness, feeling forgotten, depression, isolation, chosen or forced. Maybe from a moral failure. I hit this stage in 2018, 2019 as I was transitioning between roles. There was some emotional struggle for me, and I was asking some of those deep questions as we moved towards our current life spot. The wilderness is both an opportunity and an invitation. It's an opportunity to reflect and revisit, to evaluate your life, your values, your roles, relationships, and your dreams. For me, I needed to ask myself, what's driving me? Why do I have so much to prove to people? And when we reflect deeply, we usually find there are adjustments to be made. The wilderness is also an invitation to greater intimacy with God. Because in the wilderness, things are stripped away and we recognize in a new way that without God, I can do nothing. And our desperation in those moments can drive us to Him. I look back at my wilderness experience, and while I hated it, I wouldn't trade it for anything because it solidified my dependence on God. Every leader worth his or her salt has been through the dark night of a soul, or also known as that wilderness phase. So we're going to leave it there. Your facilitator will continue this conversation. And if this stage is where you're at, keep pressing in. Keep asking the Holy Spirit to speak to you as you reflect.